One Piece is filled with countless villains who can be described as schemers of some sort. Egotistical leaders with grand plans, masterminds, tyrants, kings, emperors, and so on. Almost every villain Luffy fights, be it the leader of a rival pirate crew or God himself, has some sort of a vision for what they wish to achieve, a greater purpose or goal that they're aiming to accomplish, that they are leading their subordinates towards. And then, amongst all of these dozens and dozens of antagonists that Luffy had to overcome, interestingly, the one that gave him maybe the greatest fight of all, perhaps the most iconic matchup of the entire series, was nothing like the rest. Rob Lucci, a character as smart as any other villain Luffy has faced, possessing incredible combat ability and willpower, who easily commands respect and obedience, and yet he doesn't seem to care about gaining anything for himself. He isn't interested in power, status, kingdoms, treasure. He really is devoid of all desire other than to kill. And so today we will be breaking down one of the most deceptively interesting villains in all of One Piece, Lucci, the ultimate weapon. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe and make sure you're not missing out on other anime and manga besides One Piece by using Surfshark VPN, the sponsor for this video. Surfshark is an award-winning VPN. And in case you don't know, VPNs allow you to virtually swap your location online to anywhere in the world, meaning that you can get access right now to free streaming in other countries that you are blocked from accessing in the United States. That means you could even get access to anime that is only available for free streaming in Japan, not to mention movies and shows from other countries. But Surfshark doesn't just let you virtually travel, it also completely protects your data while you surf the web. While you're using Surfshark, no companies or cyber criminals can get your data. You're completely invisible online while using Surfshark because it encrypts your data so that you can't be tracked, and on top of that, it even protects you from ads and malware. I just wanted to drop you a line as Surfshark is offering a special deal for Black Friday and the holiday period. The offer is increasing from 83% off to be 85% off and 3 extra months free. Additionally, Surfshark now has servers in 100 plus countries, which is special because Surfshark is the first premium commercial VPN to achieve this. So just hit the link in the description below and use code MORGE to get 85% off plus 3 extra months free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk trying it out. So what's interesting is that One Piece is ultimately a story of competition among kings, countless pirate captains competing with one another to get to the top. As Luffy is generally going up against fellow pirate captains or criminals, he is constantly up against other leaders of some sort. Even when Luffy isn't really fighting other pirates per se, he is usually fighting those who wish to control or gain power, such as Enel or Caesar. However, Lucci is very forthright in the fact that he genuinely has no agenda. The character that gave Luffy his most difficult deathmatch in the story up till that point, who so adamantly stood in his way and pushed him past his limits in one of the most drawn-out challenges Luffy has ever faced. He did it purely to carry out some orders. While someone like Spandam has intent behind his actions, goals that he is chasing, Lucci makes it clear that he is not interested in authority, power, or status. He genuinely wants to carry out orders for the world government, as this gives him the license to kill. Lucci is truly and purely driven by a desire to kill, which lines up perfectly with him buying into the belief that anyone that opposes the world government should be killed. Lucci honestly wants to be a weapon. He wants to be a gun that the world government can point and shoot at anyone that goes against them, which is a rarer character type than you might think, as very often these obedient henchmen tend to fall into more one-dimensional molds. For example, a big dumb brute, or silent, deadly mercenaries. But Lucci is actually a bit of an enigma in that he is a very layered character in terms of what he's capable of and how he thinks. He is extraordinarily smart, arguably one of the smartest characters in the entire series, practically single-handedly unraveling the entire mystery that had eluded the world government for years regarding the whereabouts of Pluton's blueprints, realizing that Tom must have passed them to Iceberg, who may have hidden them with a trusted fellow apprentice who could only have been Cutty Flam, who seemingly died but in actuality had to be the mob boss Frankie. All of it confirmed by taking Iceberg's pulse. Over and over throughout Enies Lobby, we see Lucci effortlessly solve mysteries and put pieces together, such as the truth behind Luffy's gears. And this type of casual deduction and analytical thinking is still alive and well, all these hundreds of chapters later. As Lucci has already figured out, the true reason behind CP0 being sent to assassinate Vegapunk, being that Vegapunk likely learned too much about the events of Lulusia Kingdom. Lucci is extraordinarily perceptive and clearly a lot smarter than most of his superiors, able to easily see through their agendas and directives. However, the interesting point is that he doesn't care so long as he gets to go out and kill. And even still, it's not as though he's just a smart assassin, it's the fact that he can so effortlessly act as a true leader, a commanding figure that everyone else will willingly fall in line behind. He genuinely is cut out to be the boss. Too smart to be fooled or manipulated, the perfect decision maker, strategically sharp, able to easily take charge and make others follow him, all on top of being one of the most talented fighters in the world. But at the end of the day, such a multifaceted villain was deliberately written to be just a tool, and most importantly, a willing tool for the world government, in order to play into the ideas of the Enies Lobby storyline. The true enemy the Straw Hats were fighting in Enies Lobby was not Lucci, it was not Spandam, it was the world government itself. The world was after Robin, and the Straw Hats would have to overcome the world to free her. However, since the world government is ultimately an entity, one so vast and powerful that the Straw Hats are far too early to ever hope to be able to truly take it on at that point in time, the battle between Luffy and the world government had to be played out in a more symbolic way. The world government needed a champion, a proxy figure, one that would present the most difficult and seemingly invincible wall that Luffy had ever faced. And so we got Lucci, the perfect villain to fill that role, extraordinarily capable in every single facet imaginable, a truly terrifying antagonist who most importantly did not think for himself. For all his amazing qualities, he chose to exist solely to serve the world government and kill on its behalf. Lucci's backstory is often mocked for being so simplistic, and understandably so, but the points it established are all that really needed to be established. There are 500 hostages being held by pirates. The easiest way to resolve it is by simply murdering all the hostages, and then the pirates along with them. Brilliant, ruthless, effective, strong, and obedient. That is all we needed to learn about Lucci, because at the end of the flashback, the scars that are left on his back, coincidentally reflecting the world government symbol, tell us that he truly is born to be the ultimate weapon of this grand evil organization. Lucci is symbolic of what the world government does to those that don't obey. This is the type of single-minded monster that will be sent after those that need to be eliminated. And the fact that Lucci so mindlessly obeys and has no personal agenda, has no desire for his own status or authority, while it may make him ultimately pale in comparison overall to more ambitious figures such as Crocodile and Doflamingo, it also makes Lucci the perfect villain for the context of the Enies Lobby conflict. Even if Oda had rewritten someone like Spandam to be actually an extremely competent and strong leader of CP9 and made Spandam Luffy's opponent, it would have been less effective as Spandam is ultimately still self-serving. Whereas Lucci's desire to exclusively live to carry out dark justice for the world government better represented the rigid, oppressive tyranny that the Straw Hats had to battle this arc. It's also why Lucci is the only villain that Luffy interestingly did not have a clash of ideals with at the end of their battle, whereas almost every major One Piece fight concludes with some level of dialogue between Luffy and his opponent, highlighting their differences in beliefs and what they're fighting for. Lucci is the exception. Lucci's entire final sequence against Luffy has pretty much no closing dialogue or ideological discussion from either side, as Lucci is not the one Luffy is truly fighting against, it's the evil of the world government itself. Lucci is simply the avatar that has been placed before Luffy, the ultimate dark servant of the twisted quote-unquote justice that Luffy is fighting against. Lastly, it's also particularly interesting how Lucci contrasts with the other most prominent world government antagonist in the series that we can expect to one day see a conflict against. I'm not talking about Im here, as Im is more so the one pulling the strings above the world government. Rather, I'm talking about Akainu. Akainu seems to be the evolved version of Lucci in some ways. Both are figures that seem to be extremely devoted to carrying out justice on the behalf of the world government. And while Lucci was the strongest and most capable servant of the world government in Cypher Pole, Akainu is the strongest and most capable servant of the world government in the Marines. Lucci was the primary antagonist of the Enies Lobby storyline that first featured the Straw Hats against the world government, and Akainu was first introduced and set up in the Enies Lobby storyline as the future most significant antagonist within the world government. And interestingly, as Akainu is set to have an extremely active role in the endgame of the story, and will likely be a highly prominent figure in shaping the final war, there is a key difference in how Oda seems to be shaping Akainu as a servant of the world government versus how he wrote Lucci. Even though many readers hate Akainu the most out of all the One Piece villains, and view him as the worst and most despicable depiction of absolute adherence to the world government's orders and ideals, even Akainu is not quite like Lucci. Whereas Akainu seems to be willing to kill as many people as he deems necessary to carry out the world government's justice, Lucci seems to carry out the world government's justice in hopes of being able to kill as many people as he can. It's a very telling contrast, as Akainu's justice is absolute justice, and Lucci's is dark justice, which is in fact even more sinister than Akainu's brand. It makes Lucci one of, if not possibly the single most soulless characters in the entire story, and it's very likely that in the entirety of the world government, from the Marines, through Impel Down, through Cypher Pol, Lucci is ultimately the single most cold-hearted and merciless servant of the world government that we will ever have as an antagonist. Sure, he never killed Ace, but we were one motivational speech away from Lucci killing off Usopp, Robin, and the entire rest of the Straw Hat crew. So ultimately Lucci, due to what he is meant to represent in the story, simply could not become a visionary villain like a Crocodile or a Doflamingo. But at the same time, that in itself is a large part of what makes him so interesting and more dangerous than the usual One Piece villains in so many ways. He is absurdly competent in every facet of being a villain, and yet he doesn't care for anything. Not power, not status, not authority, not material possessions. His only agenda is killing in the name of justice. And while that may not make him the greatest villain in One Piece, it certainly makes him an extraordinarily exciting one. So let me know your thoughts on Lucci below, and if you enjoyed this video then definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and you can get my extended thoughts on this and all future topics by becoming a member. Just hit the button below.